Welcome to Beyond the Blacktop podcast, where we dive into all things OHV. My name is Kevin Schmidt, and as always, here with me is Paul Hart. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Happy to be here.
Sweet. This podcast is coming out a little bit later than our normal ones had been. We actually just had our safety summit that Paul and I both attended. Woo!
It was fun.
Yeah. So the Safety Summit happens every year, if you don't know about it. This year, there were about 70 people in attendance in person and about 100 plus in attendance online, which I think is pretty good. I think that's more than we had last year. I think it's been growing each year.
Yeah, for sure. It was bigger this year. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a way to have a conversation about safety issues that are happening inside California. This year's speakers included the SVIA, the Specialty Vehicle Institute of America. They talked about different safety media campaigns that they have been working on and trying to get people free training. We had the avalanche safety person from
Sierra.
Was it the Sierra Avalanche Center?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, the Sierra Avalanche Center. Talk about avalanches, what causes them, and who is being affected by them, which is mostly the off-highway vehicle community in snowmobiles, if you didn't know that. This year there were some high-profile skiing incidences, but usually if there are
a trigger, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, it's usually from a snowmobile, or more likely to be, I should say.
Yeah, knowledge is everything when you're out there in the snow. So if you're interested, take avalanche safety course, please. It's good information. I've done it, and it's super beneficial for sure.
Definitely. And then we also had a presentation from the Desert Lifeguards. I thought that one was really interesting. It is a program where they take lifeguards who work at California's beaches all up and down the California coast. And during the winter, when there's less people going to the beaches, they bring them out to the desert where there's a lot of people recreating with off-highway vehicles, and they use their paramedic skills and their other just general knowledge base to do life-saving stuff for the OHV community.
Yeah, they were great. It's pretty unbelievable the amount of work they get done with those people that are typically at a beach. And then the desert lifeguard sounds funny, but they're using their skills just in the desert. It's awesome.
I mean, it's all still sand, right?
Yeah, there's just no water.
And then lastly, we heard from Megan's Legacy. If you haven't heard about Megan's Legacy, I highly recommend you look up who they are and what they do. They're a great group that was started from a tragic passing of a person, and just generally an all-around good OHV group promoting safety messaging throughout the state. If you are wanting to be involved in the Safety Summit, I would highly recommend it in the future. You can be involved both in person and online. Next year, I'm not exactly sure when it's going to happen, but it usually happens sometime in the middle of the summer. You can always look on our social media pages. We're usually pushing it out about a month in advance on how to sign up, how to register, get involved. You can make your voice heard in terms of what you would like to see happening in the state safety-wise. And those things are taken seriously, and we then work on trying to solve those issues in the future. Anything else that I missed from the Safety Summit there, Paul?
No, just a lot of really good conversations. You have people from industry there, land managers, general people from the public, OHV enthusiasts. There's, everyone's there. We have a little bit of everybody, which is great to see. Motorcycle Safety Foundation was there. I talked with them quite a bit. It's great event, and I encourage people to show up. Where are we having it next year? Do we know yet?
I don't know that we know yet. I don't think that we know yet.
And the online option helps too.
Yeah.
We had good online participation, so we encourage people to try that avenue if they can't come in person.
Yeah, definitely. You don't have to be in person to be involved in this. And if you can't make it all day, the online option is also a good way to go as well, because it does take place from like 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock ish in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So if that timeline doesn't work for you, or you just want to be involved in like one of the breakout groups or hear one of the speakers, you can kind of hop in and out on the online version. So it's a great way to do that. All right, Paul, do we have any events coming up here in July and August?
No, not really. As we know, as I know, I should say, and lots of people listening know, that summer months, the race season kind of shuts down.
Yeah.
They typically have a spring and a fall series. Sometimes those two series or the race schedules are combined into an overall series. The only thing I saw on the schedule for August was down in District 38, which surprised me a little bit because that's the desert. Is uh, a Grand Prix at Glen Helen Raceway. And it makes sense because Glen Helen, they can prep the track, they can water the track.
Yep.
It's a famous OHV area, riding area for people that race. They're well aware of what Glen Helen is. So that's cool to see. Other than that, District 36, nothing's going on. District 37, nothing's going on. It's summer months,
Yep.
to be expected.
I will say, there are a couple of events up on the Rubicon. There is, or not the Rubicon, but up with the Jeeper kind of clubs. There's Sierra Trek happening in the very beginning of August, I believe.
Yep, that's on the Fordyce Jeep Trail, which I used to help manage, do trail work there when I worked on the Tahoe. So that's a really cool event. If you want to go, I'd say check it out, listeners. It's super cool. They have a big camp out, barbecue, shindig at the top, at the finish of the Fordyce Jeep run. But it takes a while.
Yes.
I used to ride in the Jeep or drive sometimes, but I shouldn't say bored, but I would get out and walk, for like 8 or 10 miles and help stack rocks for people getting stuck. So that's kind of how I'd spend my day out on Fordyce.
Yeah.
It's a little slow going, and especially if one bottleneck happens, you're going to be there for a while.
Yeah, and it's definitely not a beginner's Jeep trail. So if you're going out there, make sure that you have a rig capable of going over some very large obstacles. I would
Yes.
say minimum 35-inch tires.
Yeah, a stock Jeep, man, you're going to have to be really skilled, and you're going to be stacking, and you're going to be using winch points. The Jeeps we used to use were slightly modified Jeeps, and we're talking pretty generous modifications to barely get through. It's pretty gnarly out there.
Yeah, lockers and large tires are going to be definitely the way to go if you're wanting to go down that trail. Also, if you're wanting to go down the trail, you can't be afraid of body damage. So if you're wanting to keep your paint clean, you're going to have a very capable rig.
Yeah, good luck.
Yes.
It's fun though. Yeah, August, July, August, those months, a lot of people were out dual sporting. Yeah, getting ready for fall race season, staying in shape. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now as well. Getting
Sure.
ready for some big racing in September. Until then, I'll just try to stay fit.
All right. We are now here with Marisa Williams. Marisa, can you introduce yourself real quick, what you do, where you do it, all that jazz?
Yes, so I am an outdoor recreation planner, and I currently work for the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, Eagle Lake Field Office. Our office is located in Susanville, California. For those of you who don't know, that's about an hour and a half from Reno, Nevada.
Okay, so you're like Eastern Sierras then.
Yeah, kind of
Alright.
between Redding, California, and Reno, Nevada, right there in the middle. Desert terrain.
Sweet. If you had to like describe what your job is, what would you say that you do?
Well, pretty much implied in the title. I'm a recreation planner for the outdoors. It's a pretty interesting job. I manage your public lands. It's, for the current and the future use. It's these open space lands that we have, for activities, for dirt bike riding and camping and hunting and fishing, just all those activities that we really need for our well-being. Specifically here in Eagle Lake, we have 5 developed OHV areas. We've got Fort Sage and Dry Valley. those areas are what we call limited to designated roads and trails. So the users need to stay on those trails. But then we also have other open areas where you can ride anywhere within the boundary, like Rice Canyon, Joey's Pit, Wendell Dune. So really fun stuff. I'd say day to day, I oversee and maintain and plan for things like trail maintenance, installing new picnic tables, vault toilets. That's one of my favorite things to install, shade structures. But I'm also that person, not just in the field, but the person behind the scenes, hiring seasonals, managing grant money, finding ways to get funding through grants, making maps, brochures, interpretive signs, working on the web, holding volunteer events, permitting motorcycle races, all those things that it takes to manage our public lands. And I'm just really thankful to have this position. It's really great to be able to work in the OHV community and promote responsible recreation.
Yeah, it's all awesome, Marissa. You're covering some stuff that we're going to hit on a little bit later on with our agenda here. But how long have you been around this? You mentioned a lot of tasks there, so you're an OHV manager, from what I understand. But how long have you been around motorcycles, and do you ride?
I do. So, it's kind of funny because while the rest of my friends were watching, football and baseball with their families, we were watching Supercross and motocross. I used to get to go to the Mammoth motocross track and watch my dad race. So I really kind of got to see it from a young age. And then when I got in high school, I started volunteering a little bit for the BLM Bishop field office. And that was really cool because I got to make them little interpretive signs about not crushing vegetation when you're on your dirt bike, or ATV at the time was the popular vehicle of choice. So after volunteering, I went to college and thought, well, I guess maybe I could have a career with BLM. I got my first dirt bike. It was a TTR 125. Used to ride at the Marysville track all the time. And then I was required to do an internship once I got my degree. And I was fortunate to be able to do that in the Reading field office. And I got to work with the OHV coordinator there. And that's when I really saw that BLM had these positions where we could manage the public lands. And we got to brush new trails, install new signs. I got to work on the maps for the Chappie Shasta OHV area in Redding, California, managed by the BLM down there. I got to ride my first BLM work bike. That was cool. Old Honda 200. And we still have that bike. It's in my shop now. Since then, though, I've just been really fortunate to continue to work in the OHV program. I made my way down to El Centro, worked as a EMT and park ranger in the Imperial Sand Dunes. And since then, I've worked for the Eagle Lake Field Office, managing OHV, and I've got to do some pretty fun events like help out on the BLM side of managing the King of the Hammers event in Johnson Valley.
That I'm impressed by the amount of hats that you're wearing there. I know that can be somewhat common, but it's amazing how many diverse jobs you can have all at the same time.
Jack of all trades.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah, seriously, jack of all trades. I really want to ask you about one specific trade in there, though, and that is going to be how you guys both plan for and build trails in your trail system, both in BLM and just kind of in general. So I think first I want to talk about how do you determine like where a new trail might go, or how do you plan for a new trail to go into your trail system?
Well, that's a big question, but it's a great one, and it's got a lot to it. But I'm going to try to explain it to you best I can, and hopefully we can get some more public involvement through this. So each BLM office has what's really called like a guidebook. We call it a resource management plan, like a RMP, or a recreation area management plan, which is a RAMP. And I mean, these documents, they outline the management of our OHV areas and all BLM lands, not just the OHV areas, also our hiking and non-motorized areas as well. So it's a very large document that is just oversees what we're going to do on these lands. But they often detail things like trail closures, how many miles of trails can be built, what new facilities can be added, They can even list how many race events can occur in an area. So again, I like to call it a guidebook because it's something that we open up and we look at and use that to help us manage for the future. So pretty fortunate in this office that our resource management plan was finalized in 2008. And that seems not very long ago to me now, but that's given me the opportunity to do quite a bit of planning for new facilities and trails throughout, all of our OHV areas. So right now we're in the planning stage at the Fort Sage OHV area, looking into adopting some of the existing trails and building some new trails. And all of that has to fit within our resource management plan, which it does. But the planning really starts with the public. I mean, what we're hearing from the public is what helps drive us to what needs to be done. For example, at Fort Sage, a lot of people had told me that there just wasn't good UTV connectivity. And UTVs are up and coming, right? They're more popular than ever. And so having more UTV trails so that they don't start out on their journey, hit a motorcycle trail, and then have to backtrack was really important to them, having that connectivity. So that opened my eyes to the need for the UTV community. And then single track trails. A lot of the dirt bike riders felt that the UTV riders were now on the single track trails and that they needed some more difficult terrain that they could ride in that would be specific to motorcycle use only. So all these different groups that, have these different needs, if the public doesn't come to the land agency and let us know those needs, a lot of it is us just trying to figure it out. So that's kind of where the planning starts. But once it does start, in an example of doing trail planning, we, as the land managers, go out and we find a good, suitable trail alignment. And then we work with the BLM specialists. So we have a botanist, a biologist, an archaeologist. All of those sensitive resources are then surveyed by them. If we find something, we typically realign the trail to a different location or around it. Sometimes we have to abandon it, just depending on what we find. But after that, once we've got some trails planned and in place, we take it back out to the public, and we call that public scoping. So anytime that you hear that there's going to be a public meeting about a planning document, public scoping, that's a great time to get involved because that's when we're really looking at what we're planning to do. And so without your involvement, we're nowhere. We need the public. And then the final step is creating that environmental assessment. And this is the document that basically determines if we're going to build the trail or not. And that's a public document as well that goes out to scoping for 30 days for public comment. Then the final part, the fun part, is going out with the Sweco trail tractor, building the trail using a GPS unit and just cutting in the new alignment.
Wow, Marissa, you really condensed that down, but that's awesome. So I know that like you and I have been out at Fort Sage and we've looked at some of the potential alignments. How are those projects going? And how are you getting funding to push that dirt with the Sweco?
Well, that's a great topic. So we have been super fortunate to be able to apply for the California State Parks OHV grant funding. We've obtained several planning grants through that program, and we're working on those now. Things are looking really good with the Fort Sage planning. We're in the stage that I talked about where the archaeologist, the botanist, biologist, all of the staff is out there checking for sensitive resources. We have a couple realignments here and there that we're working on, but other than that, things are going great, and I'm looking forward to adding some new trail to the Fort Sage OHV area.
How many miles are you proposing to add new at Fort Sage?
Brand new cut-in trails around 15, and don't have a good clear number yet on the rest of there's some trails out there that have been user created that we may be able to include into the OHV trail system depending on, our studies of feasibility.
So
making sure that they are good condition, good soil conditions, and good sustainable trails.
So you might almost potentially double the mileage out there. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, right now we have about 100 miles of trails at Fort Sage.
At Fort Sage.
So, yeah, just at Fort Sage. So this maybe would add about 30 miles to the trail system.
Cool. That's quite a big increase. I know when I go there and ride, it's about enough for one day. So adding those extra miles would be great. And also could help with some of those races you have out there, which are super cool. You have some nationals, right?
We do. The Last Motorcycle Club partners with the AMA to hold their races out there now.
Sweet. So you have a trail planned for, and you've taken your Suico out there and you've built it. What does maintaining a trail system like Fort Sage look like? How often are you having to go out there? Are you using volunteers? Things like that.
Well, typically, if we're, Fort Sage as a good example, we plan for our maintenance in the spring and in the fall, usually around 20 to 25 miles during that timeline. But it can be more depending on, how heavily used the trails are. Certainly, race events can increase the need for trail maintenance. And we do try to rotate that trail maintenance yearly to get it on a schedule so that over time each trail does receive maintenance. But again, that can all certainly change. If you have a big flash flood out there, it can damage a trail. One time, right after the Long Valley fire in 2017, when we went out to monitor in 2018, we found several trails washed out. One was even so washed out that I could stand in it. And so we had to, at that point, do a temporary closure, fix the trail, and then get it back up to par and reopen it. So, it's hard to predict the maintenance, but really overall, it starts with the monitoring on the trails, looking at what needs to be done, and then executing it. And again, we plan for a good solid 20 to 25 miles a year, but a lot of times that ends up being more.
So, Marissa, I know I've been out there with you and did some of the monitoring, but a couple of follow-up questions. Why do you do the maintenance in the spring and the fall? And secondly, what's monitoring mean to you? To me, I would go and ride every mile of the systems that I used to manage just to get a snapshot of what I had to manage. Is that what you do?
Yeah, definitely. We do both. We take the dirt bikes out, we take the side by sides out. And I'll be honest, usually when we are out riding, we also have a chainsaw with us so we can trim vegetation back as needed or pick rocks if that's something that's in the way of the trail that's rolled into the middle. So we don't just monitor. A lot of times we're doing work at the same time. But yes, we do have specific days where we will go and ride every inch of the OHV area. Because if you stop and take pictures and fix signs and do those kind of things, it does make it so that you can't get a big picture of everything at once. But we're out there so much that we're just seeing it. We're looking at the trails. We're seeing the use patterns, seeing the changes that happen out there. When you're monitoring for trail maintenance, you're also looking at areas where people maybe be riding illegally off-road. And so they're creating new trails. So you're looking at the need for restoration and the reasons why this is happening, things like that. So the monitoring, it means many things to us, but yes, overall, just looking and knowing what you've got out there, looking at your signs, making sure users aren't confused or getting lost, making sure the trails are in good conditions, watching that weather patterns. If we get a really heavy rain, we know we need to go out there right away and check on the trails. Luckily, we've really built up our erosion control at Fort Sage, so we're not having as many trail washouts as we used to when we'd get those flash floodings, but it can certainly still occur out there.
What does erosion control look like on a trail? Sorry, this is something that I don't know as much about, and I know that you and Paul do.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. When our operator who runs it's like a mini dozer, it's called a Suico trail tractor. When he goes out, he cuts in rolling dips. Occasionally, we'll use water bars. That's more so on like a single track trail where we're not using the Suico and heavy equipment. We're removing ruts, just picking rocks off the trail, all those things just to make the trail flow and push the water off the trail so it's not running straight down it.
Absolutely. And so, and to backtrack a little, you're doing maintenance in the spring and fall because the dirt's good, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yeah.
It's pretty hot and dry out there in the desert in the summer, and it's very difficult it's not as easy to push the dirt around, especially the hand maintenance. But even with the Suico, it's a lot easier in the spring and the fall, and it's good dirt conditions, and that's when we have the highest use in the areas as well. So people really appreciate it when that maintenance is done right before they, kick off the season.
Yeah, and so for our audience, some people may not know what a rolling dip is. They might know them as jumps on the trail, but what's a rolling dip do exactly, Marissa?
Well, I don't know if I can explain the exact science for you, but again, like I said, our goal is to push the water off the trail so that it's not running straight down the trail. When you have it running straight down the trail, you're going to get major ruts, and then people start to move off the trail. They start making big hill climbs. But we do in the desert one thing, we call them whoops, and they look similar, and they are about the same thing. They're created from the dirt bike. When they roost the dirt, it comes back and creates that whoop. So those get extremely large and difficult to ride on. And what we see with that is that people actually move off the trail because there's so many, what you would say, jumps on it that they just can't stand it. So doing that trail maintenance, but leaving strategic rolling dips or whoops in certain areas is what helps keep the trail from having, the washout.
Yeah, and for you riders out there, stay on the trail. Like if you're having issues with riding whoops, I suggest you do some squats and get a little more physically fit so you can get through those whoops. I mean, I know, Marissa, you take a really nice care of your trail system, but honestly, I don't think the whoops out at Fort Sage are ever that bad. I'm used to Baja 1000 whoops, so I love riding your system even in the summer when you can't get to that maintenance because it's just too dry. I love those whoops out there. So if you're looking for some whoop training, people in the North State, go check out Fort Sage. Maybe in like August, you might find a couple whoops out there, and stay on the trail, please.
Definitely stay on the trail. So when you're looking at these trails, you've built them, you're doing maintenance on them. Do you guys ever try and determine any kind of trail rating on them? Is there like, kind of like ski slopes or something like that, like a bunny hill versus a green circle, blue square, black diamond kind of thing? Or is it just sort of you gotta go out there and experience it?
Well, the field office I work for, we have 1.2 million acres of land. So today we're focusing on talking about one of the great OHV areas here in the Eagle Lake field office, the Fort Sage OHV area. And like I said, those other OHV areas that I listed, those we do trail marking and signing on. Some of the other trails outside the field office, yes, there's maps and it's kind of up to the user to explore those areas. But for Fort Sage, Dry Valley, Rice Canyon, and we're working on Joey's Pit and Wendell Dune, I have had the opportunity to get to actually do the trail rating. So it is very similar to a ski resort. We've got the green circle, that's the easiest. The blue diamond, it's more difficult. Black diamond is the most difficult. And then some areas have a double black diamond. We have one at Fort Sage. It's called the Widowmaker Trailhead. But keep in mind that the rating for each OHV area, it's based off its own trail system. So you start with the most difficult trail and then the easiest trail and use that as a starting point. So if you were to go to Fort Sage and ride on a trail that's marked as a blue diamond, that's more difficult, but then you go over to Dry Valley and you ride on a trail that's a green circle, you're probably going to think that that green circle is harder than the trail at Fort Sage, and that's all based off the terrain. The difference between the more rocky terrain and the sandy terrain can make that change. And I always, if you're a novice rider and you're looking to go out to a new OHV area, it's always good to contact the BLM, talk to the outdoor recreation planner. We can recommend great trails for you or your family to ride on. That way, you have a good starting point of areas to ride. And Fort Sage is it's a really great place for a novice rider. Other trail type sighting is the motorcycle, ATV, UTV, and truck. So those are, for your safety. If a trail is marked as motorcycle only, most likely it's got some kind of limiting terrain that you can't take your UTV on. Your wheels will probably be on the edge of the trail, so it's for your safety, those symbols on each trail. So list the trail type. And again, those are just recommendations, but it is for your safety.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head, Marissa. It's like ski resort. If you go to Mount Shasta, a green, a blue, and a black there is going to be different than something, let's say, in like Colorado, right? What I suggest for riders, when you show up to an area, put your ego aside because you may think a black diamond's a certain thing, but I tell you what, if you go down Widowmaker and you're not used to steep downhills, you are not going to be very happy. I like steep downhills. If you try to go up it, I suggest you go there in the spring or fall when it's wet so you can get some traction. But yeah, you described that perfectly. Um, Speaking of some of the trails you mentioned earlier, like people riding off trail, you mentioned you guys are studying to potentially add some of those, but are you also maybe closing some of those? And what's that look like? How are you funding that? Are you doing additional studies as well?
Yes, that's correct. We actually have two grants at Fort Sage. One is specific to planning for new OHV opportunity, and the other one is specific to restoration planning. And so there are some trails that go through sensitive habitat that have damaged some resources, and those do need to be closed. So anytime that there's an illegal trail, we do the same. We make an assessment on it. We walk it, the specialist, the archaeologist, the botanist, the biologist. We take a look at those. Again, those studies are to really look at why are people creating these new trails? What does Fort Sage need that this is happening? You know, public education, signing, all those things is what we're taking into account. For us at Fort Sage, we had that large fire in 2017. And then after that, COVID hit, and we were actually not allowed to be in the field during that time. And so people were out recreating while we were unable to help manage that recreation. And we got a lot of people riding off trails. And there's other variables too. We manage range out in the Fort Sage OHV area. So a lot of times the cows will just go and make a trail. Well, sometimes cows make fun looking dirt bike trails. So it's hard to resist not riding on those, right? So, you know, it's really important to stay on the designated trails because those are the trails that we have walked with the specialists, that we have cleared for open, you know, for OHV riding for your use. So yeah, we do have restoration, some issues at Fort Sage, and again, we're trying to look at that with a good study and get the public involved and find out what the area needs so that we can keep that area open and sustainable.
Yeah, I've seen some of your restoration work. It's really awesome. You put a lot of effort and thought into it, and it appears it was never there, and that's what I like to see. Some people like to put red markers up and say this trail was closed, and then only maybe close behind it 100 yards or just eyesight. That doesn't really work. You make it in such a way that it looks like it was never there. So appreciate the work there on those efforts, especially in some of those burn areas, like you say, you got to put down the jute and to help stabilize the soil, and it really, I think, speeds up the restoration process. Good job out there on that.
I actually,
Thanks. It's not, yeah.
sorry, I have a quick question about this because we've mentioned this fire a couple times. And we had a episode a while ago that talked about fire and OHV trails. For your system up there, how long did it take to rehabilitate some of those fire impacted trails? What was like kind of the average timeline for you for getting those back up and open again?
You know, we were actually really lucky because we're in the sandy desert terrain. We did have to prohibit 1 year of race events. We actually had the club move over to a different section of Fort Sage. They used to use the Widowmaker Trailhead for their races. And so right after the fire, we made the decision to allow them to still race, but on the other side of the OHV area and let any trail that had burned over rest. Not all of the OHV area burned, mostly just the southern and eastern area of it. So it, you know, we still had sections that they could utilize. So we just rested those trails that burned over, and honestly, we didn't have a lot of downtime. We were able to only have the OHV area closed for maybe about a month
That's
before we could
awesome.
reopen it. Yeah, and you know, when you're in the desert, you don't have downed trees and those major issues like they do in the forest. So yeah, we were able to get it up and running pretty quickly, and we reseeded almost all of Fort Sage. They did it aerial, and then they also did on the ground with heavy equipment. And that seeding, I mean, here we are now, 2026, and you can't even really see the evidence of the fire other than we lost a lot of the better vegetation. You know, a lot of the cheatgrass is now there, and creates more of a fire danger. But overall, the vegetation is looking really good out there. So the desert heals pretty quick, surprisingly.
So for that initial fire rehab, how was that paid for? Was that through the fire or through OHV funds?
All of that rehab was through fire funding.
Nice.
But in, discussion of those California State Parks OHV grants that have been so amazing to our program, we're actually redoing the Widowmaker Trailhead. We're in stage 2. Right after that fire, I mean, I was pretty devastated when I went there. It was just black sand. All of the road and gravel was covered with sand. I mean, I just thought there was no hope for it. But if you were to visit it today, you would see a huge difference. It looks amazing out there. We've regraded and graveled. We've got shade structures, barbecues, fire pits, all sorts of items out there. And we're working on installing a vault toilet and some more shade structures. So it's looking really good. And that's all from a development grant from the program.
That's awesome. I love that.
I tell you what, Fort Sage is one of my favorite places to go ride in the winter time. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. Marisa does some killer work out there. We're about wrapping up here, Marisa, but before we do that, I'll have a couple more questions I'd like to ask you. What's your favorite trail to ride out there, and what bike do you currently ride?
Trail 15. It's just a classic, fun. It's got a nice sandy wash that you go through, some uphill sections, good rocky downhill section, and it's just got beautiful terrain. We even have a hand-painted painting of a rider on that trail. It's pretty cool. Right now, I'm riding a Beta X trainer, or cross trainer.
Yeah.
300 RR.
Yeah.
That's not right. I think I got to redo that.
No, that's right. Yeah, the cross trainer's a 300, and I think we definitely rode Trail 15 last time I was out there. I'm pretty sure we did. I think
You did.
And Sky did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun trail. Like I said, it's just got a lot of good characteristics to it. It's a good mix of the desert terrain, and then you kind of hit that rocky terrain at Fort Sage, and you're up in the juniper trees. So it just really gives you that experience of both sides. Fort Sage does have 2 sides. It's kind of that sandy side, and then that higher elevation terrain in the Rockies area.
All right, last question. What is something you would like all trail users to know? Anything you want them to avoid, things that they can help with?
Well, I mean, I think just treating public lands like it's your own backyard, that's really important and helps us manage the area and keep OHV riders with having a good reputation. But then also just pay attention to your local BLM and Forest Service. Watch those land management decisions and just have a voice about your recreation areas. Help us manage them too, and let us know so that we can build a strong program for what you want to see for now, for the current, and the future.
I love that.
And volunteer. Don't forget to volunteer. Volunteers can perform trail maintenance, monitor areas, all those things.
Yes, get involved. Get involved. Whether that's showing up to those public meetings about what you want the trails to look like, or volunteering out in the public spaces that you recreate, get involved.
Absolutely.
Yes.
However you can. It's super helpful. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on with us today. I really appreciate you taking your time to be here, and hopefully we'll be able to get up to your neck of the woods soon. And
neck of the desert.
Neck of the desert. Just beyond the woods.
Yes.
Over the hills and through the woods.
In the fall, it's good in the fall as well out at Fort Sage. So, thanks, Marisa. This has been great.
Thank you too. Great talking with you guys.
All right, bye. And now time for our last section, Community Connections. This question actually comes from someone at the Overland Expo that we were at earlier this year. I kind of hung on to this question for this time of year because a lot of people are out camping this time of year. But it is, how far off the road do you need to be to dispersed camp? Is there any specific areas that they're required to camp in, or can they go wherever?
That's a little bit of a loaded question. I can give some personal experience from my time at the Forest Service, and this is not 100%. This is a pretty general, basic rule of thumb that was decided upon in travel management, kind of nationwide, but generally speaking, no more than a vehicle length off a road or at a road, like at the end of a road. There are a lot of roads that dead end. That's kind of your dispersed camping. There will be some areas that are like super busy, like road corridors, where they may have no dispersed camping period or no dispersed camping in a vehicle length off the road. Again, that's kind of generally speaking. Some BLM areas are like open, just open, whatever, cross country travel open. You could disperse camp anywhere out there, but a pretty good rule of thumb is no more than a vehicle length off the road. Kevin, what have you heard?
I always tell people talk to the ranger station.
Yeah.
If you really want to know,
Yeah.
go ask the local ranger station that you're going to, because they will have the answer, because it truly depends on where you are. There are certain areas where dispersed camping, or the area became so popular that there were just people dispersed camping everywhere, that the management area decided, hey, actually it'd be better if they were just in this one space. It's still dispersed camping, but there's kind of a area that you need to stay within,
Yeah.
and then the rest can't. There's just off the road, and then there's also the open areas that you were talking about where you can be kind of wherever. So my general answer to this question is just ask the ranger station for the area that you're going to. So if you know that you're going to, say, the Tahoe National Forest, give a ranger station in the Tahoe National Forest a call. If you know you're going down to, say Barstow, yeah, give the BLM field office there a call, because they'll be able to give you the answer that you need, because it's going to be different anywhere that you are.
Yep. Always plan ahead, right?
Always.
Yep.
This has been the Beyond the Blacktop podcast, brought to you by California State Parks. If you have a question you would like answered on a future episode, please reach out to us on Facebook at California State Parks Off-Highway Motor Vehicle Recreation Division, on Instagram at CA State Parks OHV, or email us at ohvinfo@parks.ca.gov with the subject Beyond the Blacktop. This podcast is copyrighted by California State Parks. No part of this podcast may be reproduced or distributed without the written permission of California State Parks, its districts, or divisions.